Hello, everyone. Welcome to SPF21. I'm Zena Harris. I'm president of Green Spark Group, and I'm your MC for this session. First off, I'd like to acknowledge that I am speaking to you from the traditional village sites of the Multnomah, Cathlamis, Clackamas, bands of the Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Malala, and other major Indigenous peoples who made their homes along the Columbia River. Now, before we dive in, I wanted to thank our lead partners, our transformational partner, Real Green, Creative BC, and Empia, our presenting partner, MBS Equipment Company, Canada, our signature partners, CBC Radio Canada and Telefilm Canada, our Green Marketplace lead sponsor, The Green Shot, exclusive program partner for this session, Ontario Green Screen. If you're on Instagram or Twitter, join the social media conversation by following us at SPF_Vancouver and using the hashtag SPF21. You can find us on LinkedIn and Facebook under Green Spark Group. Today, we're talking about circularity. Let's get into some ideas and skill building in this next session. Circularity, everything in needs an exit plan. More than recycling, circularity is the art department. In the art department is quite literally an art. It's the art of cooperation and reuse, and it certainly requires creative thinking. On our menu, material choice, modular sets, scheduling, strike, new samples, and lockups. Our moderator today is Karen Steward. Karen is a Los Angeles-based art director and production designer in film and television, who has been actively working in the industry since 1987, and for an equal amount of years, has been concerned about the waste generated in the art department specifically, and the film industry in general. All right, Karen, over to you.
Thanks, Zena, for that introduction. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 6th Annual Sustainable Production Forum. I have been listening to a few panels, and it's so great to hear what is happening locally and around the globe regarding the evolution of film solutions. And before I introduce our talented panelists for today's session, entitled Circularity, Everything In Needs an Exit Plan, I genuinely wish to thank President Zena Harris and her team at Green Spark Group for hosting such an important convention. I personally feel so grateful and honored to be part of it, and I know you will all benefit broadly from the connections made here and from the learning opportunities to be discovered. There are so many connected and related events and forums available to you, not just today, but throughout the year, so we hope you will continue to participate and spread the word. This SPF event has been carefully and caringly, I might add, crafted into a vital wellspring of unique resources and information with the common goal of creating positive impacts and steps along the path of sustainability within our industry, and here in our case, specifically the film and television art department. As Zena said, my name is Karen Steward. I'm a union-affiliated Emmy-nominated art director and production designer based in Los Angeles, as well as an exhibiting fine artist. I have been working in the industry since the late 80s. I'm on the advisory board of both Green Spark Group, as well as my family's urban planning nonprofit based in the Midwest. Some of my film projects have included The Newsroom, Westworld, and Olympus Has Fallen. I do also host a Facebook page, which since 2016 called Film Industry Materials Exchange, which you can follow. This is a place where I post about innovative materials, interesting events, and a variety of art department materials info, and I invite you to participate. Also, just as a side note, since we are a business of storytelling, I would love for everyone to check the chat for a link to the first prize award-winning short film called 3 Seconds, awarded by Film for Climate Change. In case you haven't seen it, please check it out and share it. Okay, so our incredible group of panelists today are Marian Wihak, Joe Madziak, and solmaz eshraghi. Marian is a multi-award-winning Toronto-based production designer and theater designer, and she is currently the National Art Department rep for the Directors Guild of Canada. For 30 years, Marian has enjoyed working across Canada as well as in New York, Poland, and South Africa. And she holds a Master of Fine Arts and is participating multidisciplinary artist, which I wish I had one of your pieces as our background right now. Hi, Marian. I can't hear you. You are on.
I muted because it was a bit noisy here before. So thank you so much for the introduction, and to Zina and yourself for inviting me to be part of this panel. It's a real thrill. And I don't have that much more to add other than the fact that I have gotten very engaged in the sustainability concerns within our industry. In a formal way, I've joined Green Sparks. I'm part of the Green Sparks group. I'm part of the National Directors Guild of Canada Sustainability Committee, part of the Ontario Working Group, Sustainability Committee, and it's just been a long time concern, the waste that is involved in. So within my practice as a film designer, I've certainly tried to engage in a circular approach, even if it wasn't called that when I was doing it. So anyway, I'm really happy to have this conversation happening today.
Great.
Yeah.
And then we have Mr. Joe Madziak, who is a Canada-based construction coordinator in film, television, and theater, who is setting examples for other coordinators regarding sustainability solutions. Hi, Joe.
Hey, Karen. Thank you. I think it might be a bit premature to say I'm setting an example. I think I'm trying to set an example. I'm working at it. And part of that is I just know there's people out there doing it better. And that's the beauty of a forum like today, because, maybe some ideas get out there and we connect, and then we can all take things to the next level. So thank you.
Absolutely. And then we have solmaz eshraghi, a Toronto-based practicing architect with the firm Diamond Schmitt, and is also a set designer who cares deeply about modular design and material sustainability. Hi, solmaz.
Karen, good to talk to you again. Yes, I think you've covered everything. I'm an architect and a set designer, so it's a privilege to both sides of the design and build practice. And I hope I'm also part of the art department sustainability working group, working with Marian, and so it's been interesting. Both sides of sustainability design.
Great, thank you. Yes, I am happy that we're merging here, because that group is sort of out in the lead, I think, kind of, especially for North America. The Canadians are winning in terms of circularity and discussion. And I personally am learning a lot from all of you Canadians. So I feel honored to be a part of what you all are learning. Let's get into this definition of circularity. As we've heard in previous panels, circularity is a simple concept, but requires a lot of collaboration. It means that a product is created with its own end of life taken into account. In a circular economy, once the user is finished with the product, it goes back to the instead of the landfill. The motto of the circularity movement, in a nutshell, is waste not, want not. Circularity contributes to a more sustainable world, but not all sustainability initiatives contribute to circularity. Circularity focuses on resource cycles, while sustainability is more broadly related to people, the planet, and the economy. The specific areas of concentration for this particular panel here today have roots in many previous discussions on how to handle so much art department waste, from script to build to wrap, which, by the way, is when time has run out for sustainable solutions. So a few collective indicators have come up for this panel as to where in the design process we should find importance and change. And the first area that comes up is when we first get the script and during script breakdown and conversation with producers. So I've broken this process into 3 phases, which are all basically sort of rolled into one. But it's essentially the script, breakdown, and design, which work together as one, and then build, process, and then the wrap. But it's important to say that these phases are extremely interrelated and vary between types and sizes of projects, as Marian and I were discussing yesterday. Each of our panelists are invited to join in on each of these topics. So for starters, considering the script into the design process, Marian, let's start with you. The art department is always amongst the first in the door when starting a project. How can we suggest sustainable solutions early in the design process, for instance, when we're breaking down a script?
I think you're right that we are the first ones in the door. Quite often it's, myself and the production designer and the director and producers and location manager. We're often the first ones through the door. And so when we get, I think before even getting into the script conversation, I think it's, can we have a conversation about how sustainably we want to approach the production as a whole, like get that flea in their ear right off the bat. And this is growing. Not all producers are, ready to hear that because they're trying to get the whole production ready. But I think it's a very important conversation to have early and repeat numerous times as more and more people come into the fold. And then as you get your script, certainly there's ways to read the script and just driven by economic considerations, find ways to consolidate, sets, locations, whatever, so that it makes more sense with an economic schedule function. But I think it can also dovetail into as a sustainable approach too, so that you aren't sort of building excessive sets that maybe thematically can still tie in together and not make the script and the story suffer any. So I think you always have to keep forefront in mind that you are serving a story. So what's the dog and what's the tail in all this? And I think the story in the film is always the dog. But it doesn't mean that sustainability and concerns that way have to be the tail. I think it can be a more holistic approach. And then, segueing, I think that the most effective thing I can do as a production designer, besides kind of trying to ignite these conversations, is also approach my design. Like I tend to do smaller and medium budget features as opposed to series. So that's what I can speak to is it's quite easy for me to think, okay, I want to try to find existing either sets or assets or something somewhere that I can retrofit, reapply to the purposes I need on my show. And so I think that's one of the most effective circular things that I can do at the outset is kind of try to sort of, find things that already exist and give them a life that continues. And for example, on the show we're on right now, we're building some things from scratch, but we're already reusing some elements, and we're already thinking about what's going to happen with them at the end. So already I know that most of what we're building, 75% of it is going to go back into the cycle of reclaimed wood, reclaimed elements and stuff. So I think just approaching the design with that in mind, it doesn't hamper my creativity at all. It just becomes part of the process. So it's like, am I using an HB pencil or am I using a computer, whatever? It's just part of the process of having that in your mind as you're starting to design the project. So.
And at what point during the design process for you, Marian, do you actually start talking to producers or, about sort of, listen, we've decided to design this way. We're working on circular design. How do you feel about this set being this and that? Maybe we're going to try something we've never tried before. I mean, do you get to talk to producers like that in the early phase of this?
I certainly could. I think, this isn't to diminish the intellect or anything of producers, but as long as you do your job properly and bring it in on budget, that's one of the main concerns. So if you have innovative, strategies and stuff that happen to be also sustainable, and it's an effective, creative product that serves the project, I don't think you don't really have to have further discussion than that, really. I mean, you can tell them, but you know what I mean? As long as you land on budget and serve the show, you can, I feel you can develop your own strategy. So what I just described is we're building this set and we're going to reclaim 75% of it. Sure, that would make them happy, but that doesn't mean anything in the bank until it really happens. But it's still keeping our costs down, and we're approaching it in this way because we feel it's a sustainable and creative way to approach the project. So I feel that I don't need to actually, definitely, it doesn't have to be so granular a conversation with the producers in this regard. I'm doing this and I know it'll be on budget and it will be effective.
Mostly the reason I ask is because if you ask the producer or tell the producer on one show that this is how we're doing this modular set building, then that producer will go to the next show and perhaps say to that designer who doesn't know modular necessarily, this is what happened at that show. Maybe they suggest it.
Well, exactly. And just the fact like, well, again, if we do, for example, I'll just keep going back to this example, if we do reclaim 75% of our materials and sets, whether it's, modularly built set flats that I'm encouraging, our draftsmen and the construction team to build 4-foot wide increments or, 4, 8, 12, that kind of increments. And all the flats are 10 feet. So that then they become units that someone else can buy, someone else can get. We don't sort of foresee the same kind of tipping bin charges that we might if you didn't take that into consideration. And I think at the end, if we come out and the project looks good and plus you get 75% back, that will be a metric that the producer, I think, would be happy to kind of talk about and sort of say, this is what happened. So I think, we have to go through this process and hopefully it will land well. And you're right, then it becomes something they want to sort of emulate on the next project they do or encourage in the next project they do.
Right. I like to take this opportunity to add your DGC video to...
Oh, right. I'll mention it. So back in mid-August, I put a panel together, which Joe was one of the people on it, and it was called Circular Design Build, and it was focusing on 2 different panels from series projects. Talked about how they were fairly intuitively, but also really strategically and smartly created a circular design approach. And perhaps we can talk a bit later about it, Joe, you can, because you were one of the people on that panel. But I invite everyone to look at the webinar because I think it's quite informative and helps give insight into, it's not so hard, it's not brain surgery, it's not really that hard to kind of implement some of these really effective circular methodologies.
Yeah, and what's great about it, I watched it the other day, you have presentations which are incredibly helpful. You actually bring out real-time projects, and sort of...
Yeah, with real examples. So, and Joe speaks very eloquently and articulately about how he smartly kind of, with 5 elements, turned it into 50 sets or something like that. So anyway, I encourage you to watch it because it does help give you encouragement if you don't quite know how to even embark on this. So.
And then, so then we break down the script, and what that means is we basically go through, okay, there's 52 sets, 17 are location and the rest are on stage, which is usually the other way around. But solmaz, as a designer, coming into this transition from breaking down the script, working with Marian or the production designer on the show, and then coming into the real sort of nuts and bolts design phase, how can we innovate with materials and think about circularity further within the design phase?
I think it's really interesting to think about the design process as a whole. Sometimes it's, like you said at the beginning, thinking about how we deal with things that we're creating at the end of their life, at wrap. So I think it's great at that point. And even before breaking anything down, like the script is good planning for the end of life, right? Like, for example, as we're going along and we're deciding for what sets we're creating, which ones we're consolidating, which ones we're going to do, and I'm currently thinking about how are we going to dismantle this thing? What will it take? Where will it end? And it's starting to really plan for it and quantify it. Coming from an architecture background, you always have to essentially, kind of keep inventory of everything that you're going to use and what you're going to do, and sort of phase and delineate the process for our clients and also for our construction partners. So I think an approach like that helps, because I know that when I started, some of the ways that we were thinking about sets, that we were spending a great deal of time creating and designing and drawings for, the end of life of this set was just like one word. It just says a strike on our, whether it's the site plan or whether it's the drawing for the set, and that's it. And that really fell into like how much time does construction have to deal with that, and as the schedules are so tight and it's really tied into the economy of the whole production. It just sometimes they have to deal with it as fast as they can. I know, for example, Joe has put, he's developing this network of like sending it along to the next production, finding, the next home for this set. But I don't think all the productions are on the same level. And I'm not saying that because I think they don't want to be, but it's a matter of time, having the right connections, or having thought about it, right? Time is oftentimes money. And if it hasn't been scheduled or thought about, or if it isn't any interest, it will just end up, discarded. I know that there are a lot of, productions that are interested in taking material, but there are also companies now that are into, collecting and taking advantage of like old sets for their own production. Like I know one company in Ontario called Digital Canaries. They look after, like they're very much interested in receiving whether dismantled sets, whether just materials, or whatever you might have. So by planning ahead of time, you'll be able to do that and not have to be stressed out about it. And this could be like, incorporated into your drawing, or just like even if it's part of the schedule or the matrix of the production beginning. The other thing that is from an architect background in terms of materials, they're very strict about what materials. In architecture, there's a lot of liability and things have to last a long time. But I actually think it's a good practice for anything that has to be building. If you know exactly what you're saying, what qualities it has, how you can specify how long it will have to last. So in architecture, we create these estimations, and I think something similar working so well. It would essentially spell out all the materials you use that you would be using, and it modular sets include. It could go down to your paint, right? And it could include how you dispose of it at the end. And this is something that one production does it, this can actually move forward to the next production. Like against if you're a construction manager or a construction designer, this becomes almost like the Bible of the set, right? You can get this and know exactly you don't have to think about it. If you have to create a set, as we know, sometimes the scripts are last minute, kind of a lot of times for cost reasons. Create sets or combine them or come up. And you have this guide that will tell you exactly. You don't have to think about it, and you just pick something that's a responsible solution right away without thinking about it. So these are the things that I noticed. And going back to that idea of, tweak scripts in order to save cost or time, or change that sort of thing. I think it would be worthwhile to think about the environmental cost at the same time. If there is trying to change something in the story, it could be to help kind of our footprint, right? If we go to a particular location, or we need to create a set that's crazy, maybe we can take advantage of another set or something that boost later on as part of the full production, instead of this one-off solution. So these are the sort of things that I was thinking about when I was doing work on shows.
Mm-hmm. And so by the time we get to the building phase, construction phase, Marian and I and solmaz have brought to you, Joe, all kinds of great ideas for new inventions. So just considering the build process, what are some of the ideas for circularity implementation in construction? Maybe talk about what needs to be revised about the construction wrap process.
Yeah, well, I think both solmaz and Marian hit on communication, like conversations, early conversations. That's crucial. And in an ideal world, we might even have a little time before the production actually starts. As I said, we don't need the space. You don't need to open up the office just for us. But even if we had some Zoom calls before we started, because every project's so diverse that we do. You know, we could go from doing like a modern hospital to Civil War stuff to French Revolution. You know, every project's so different that those few early conversations, I think, would help, number one. And especially when we talk about trying to figure out the exit plan for it, I think those early conversations would be very helpful. But I think, so I come from a series background, and a series tends to lend itself more to reusing. We've always sort of saved some architectural pieces, doors, windows, that sort of thing. But I think in order to take it to the next level, to really have that exit plan for everything, we need to, as Marian and Solmaz said, you need to start thinking that in the design process. That I want to build this for this set, and I could maybe add some mullions to this window over here, and then for the next set that I know is coming up in 102, or if not. So I think there's I think to start thinking with modular design. And I think that might freak a lot of people out, thinking that they have this picture like of Lego or something, or just, it doesn't have to be like all these little bits and pieces all the same size, or all these. It just means rethinking that, yes, we could reuse this. I just want to give it, you know, on suits, we knew we had a lot of offices. So we had a whole series of windows, glass windows. We had clear anodized bronze windows, black windows, and we had different sizes. And we could mix and match those along with some modular flats we built, and we could create offices very quickly. And once we got good at that, we started realizing that some of the home environments we came up against, kitchens and living rooms, we got very good at, because of what we learned from doing sort of the easier stuff. We learned a lot in terms of reusing a lot of that stuff. So I think in terms of some of the things that we need to think about is, of course, you got to have the design on board. And that's where I think the early conversations come in hand. You've got to have a space to store some of this. And it doesn't have to be a huge warehouse space or anything. Often there's little nooks and crannies around the set, like as long as we're not blocking the firewalls, but often there's little pockets where you can store here and there. And I think number two, you need to create a manifest or a catalog so you can then show the designer. You can either walk them down there or see it, or you've got pictures, and it helps to have measurements, because then you can hand it off to the set designers and say, I've got these many windows, they're 3 feet 5 3/8 inches each, and blah, blah, blah. And then they can build that in so the designer can get a sense of whether that proportion is going to work for this set. So you've got all those things. I mean, yes, you start with, FSC products, you start looking for sustainable products, you start looking for recycled products. But the biggest thing that we can do is to reuse, to keep that out of landfill. And I've mentioned this at another forum, but just for people listening, I just want to mention how important it is, because, everybody's talking about waste, but nobody does it better than us. At a show that I took metrics of not too long ago, I was responsible for sending 150 metric tons to landfill. So that's one series. And I know last summer we had like 32. I'm from IATSE Local 873. And I know at one point last summer we had like 32 productions going. So think of all, if we don't start thinking very seriously about this, just to put that, I don't want to put a downer on this for anybody, but I think that should be inspiration. There's reason enough for us to go ahead. So in terms of then the original app, if you've taken all this into consideration, also, if I just want to point out, I'm actually working with a company that is presented in our list of companies, but Think Lightweight, and they're working on trying to create modular set pieces for us. They're getting ready with a prototype, and I'm meeting him in a week or two, and then we'll take it from there. But that it doesn't always have to be an outsourced modular piece. I think as long as you start thinking and designing with reuse in mind, we can drastically cut down the landfill. And then it's a matter, when it comes to wrap, it's a matter of starting ahead. You know wrap is coming. And so it's a matter of reaching out with some lead time instead of like a week before said, yeah, I got this, but you got to pick it up by Friday because we got to be out of the studio by Friday. And that's what happens so often. So we just need a little bit of lead time, maybe take some pictures, take some dimensions, take some pictures while it's up and maybe while it's down, and then start getting that word out amongst each other.
It came up the other day when we were talking about construction and wrap and warehouse needs and stage needs and all of this. The idea of a drawing bank. We were thinking, how would this help construction in the art department if somebody's done the Oval Office 100 times, but you don't have direct access to those drawings, or maybe they stored the set without the drawings, which is always a pain. But there are companies who are storing scenery, but they scene dock the scenery, and then there's no drawing connected to it. And so how does that help us be able to choose and reuse? It makes it a little bit more difficult.
I think there's a couple things. I'll jump in here. It's like companies like Digital Canaries, who solmaz mentioned, they actually buy a lot of these sets. In fact, one of them's the Oval Office, and they've set it up in this warehouse. And it's not a studio; it's a warehouse in Hamilton. But this is as an example of one strategy is to encouraging some business entity to set these things up so that they're there for many people to use, all those people that need an Oval Office or all those people that need a jail or whatever. So they're kind of standing sets. And this particular place, invites people to paint it or do whatever they want, as long as they leave it in good shape, and then the next group can come in and paint it, whatever. Plus they take on elements like assets, whether it's just flats, risers, windows, that kind of thing. And I think that's something we've been talking about quite a lot in the kind of Toronto industry. Is it a viable thing to find a place to put some of these things so that there's doors, there's windows, there's flats, and people can come in and rent them from there. So it's sort of a kind of a bit of the typical elements and modular elements that would comprise a set that are rentable, so you don't have to build it from scratch every time. The big bump, of course, is real estate and the cost of that kind of facility, but it is a conversation we're having. When it gets to series and things, and Joe, you could speak to this more clearly, but a lot of series create a little bit of a lockup themselves, and I think I think there's various people like Clara George, for example, she's the head of the National Directors Guild Sustainability Committee, and she's also the Canadian Sustainability point person for Netflix. So I think she's encouraging the Netflix projects in Canada or in Toronto, and to create storage facilities so that elements and assets can be stored there and used within their project. So I think trying to normalize this flow, this storage and flow, I think is part of the challenge, but also part of the goal, obviously. So
let's just take one of these questions real quick in the chat. Do any of you have ideas for stage curtain alternatives that are naturally flame retardant? The flame retardant coating is not environmentally great, and B, requires for the stage curtains needing to be no longer used and repurchased. Is there a circularity service for such products?
I don't know if there is. I would suggest you reach out. I don't know if Ian Garrett's watching this, but Ian Garrett is connected with GreenSpark, and he's a deep well of knowledge of these kind of things, all things green, sustainable, and theatrical. So I would just maybe, Zena, you could connect or put that in the chat, because I think Ian Garrett, if anyone knows, he would probably know. So.
Okay, so, and we're talking about, warehouse space, obviously, which is now the construction coordinator needs to talk to the producer and justify why we need so much warehouse space. If in fact, during a project, we're going to store windows and doors and fireplaces and all kinds of flooring, floating ceilings and flats that can be reversed and things, and places to innovate. So in our mill space, it's like we need the extra space to be able to innovate and to store things. And so, you know, if I have to run over to Western Scenery, which is 17 miles from my set, to see what is there, then I'm not going to go. I'm probably not going to do that. So the question is sort of like, you know, how can we sort of make a door dock or do a scene dock on our own stages so that we can walk in and see what our possibilities of reuse materials that we can reuse are throughout a show. How do you handle that, Joe? Do you do A-frames around the set? Do you?
Again, it depends a little bit on the show. When I was doing suits up at Downsview, somehow miraculously we always found space. It was such a big, we had such a huge area to deal with. It was very good. The show I'm on now, by the time we're done building, we're going to be packing the 3 stages. So we're going to need an extra space. I've already talked to the producer because there are a lot of sets that we already envision are going to be flipping and back and forth and reusing in different ways. So I've already spoken to them about a space. I think, though, Karen, you sort of the suggestion you made. You need either good photographs or it's got to be handy to either have a look at or very good photographs, because the designer, even if he or she kind of knows what piece it is, it just helps for them when they're designing to have that feel, and then also for the set designer to have it in front. And I've seen where drawings will then come down with those photos, like we're using these pieces, and then they actually have the photos of those, so there's no mistake. Where you like this photo, this bay window, these doors, and they've actually transplanted those photos right to the drawing, and that's really handy as well. The question is, when it comes near wrap, it's trying to get that information out to other teams, to that are starting up, that hopefully other shows starting up.
I know, Joe, just jumping on something that you said back, I think during the Circular Design Build webinar, is that you felt there was a business case, which is kind of for storing, for creating a storage, and even possibly refurbishing of sets and stuff. Maybe that might be helpful to talk about that, because it might seem like no, we don't have room for this, don't have time for this, but in fact, it is a savings of money, even though it seems like an outpouring of labor. It seemed like an interesting concept you had.
Yeah, it's interesting because after talking with Peter Miskimen at Wiseacre, and they've been buying up assets and trying to pass them on. I think everybody has to buy in it. I do believe that you can make a good business case, but I think you need the support of all the other coordinators in the city. I think you need people I think there needs to be a little bit of education involved there. I think as long as everybody's on board, I'm quite confident that you could make a good business case for this.
But even within your own project, it sounded like you could make a business case for
yeah, absolutely. When you start, if you can put together a set, like typical schedules these days, everybody's changing schedules and things back and forth. So you're often called on to whip up a set pretty quickly, which often involves overtime. And if you've got pieces ready, like I refer back to suits, we could put together an office very quickly. And I just know if you've got the right set pieces, you're saving the production money all the way down with labor, material costs, bin costs, and more importantly, with overtime. So if you can put a set together quickly, absolutely, that's a strong business case.
But I also think that actually goes back to this idea of creating businesses that are even maybe outside. I keep going back to Digital Canaries because I think they're very visionary right now. But it's a little bit of a shift. It would be a shift in the industry, but also thinking about a sort of an entity, a company that actually takes care of so much of what you have to worry about. For example, delivering it, taking it away, storing it and then kind of taking care of it sort of in having a company take on that task and that life, it was pretty amazing. And what I know, the idea that they have in mind is also like an online catalog. I know you were saying, Karen, that sometimes you just need something, right? Or not really get if you have to like travel so long and so far to get it, it's not worth it. But if it's something that's readily available, that you can actually from like an online catalog, and their thinking is to actually add augmented reality for these objects. Not only you have it online, but you can also like say a 3D set you have. And I mean, more and more we have these things for our sets, right? And you can see it sort of right in the set how it will interact with the rest of things. I think that's pretty brilliant. And that will be something that if it's the industry has supported it, it has to support it. It's not necessarily that one of the production houses has to do it, but it's more about buying into their business practice, get their Oval Office and an Oval Office set, or they have these planes, etc. And that allows them to grow and become more viable. So I think having visionary people and people like Joe who are willing to actually use these slightly outside of norm ways of doing things is pretty brilliant. Only a couple of people need to take the first step, but then that kind of demonstrates the value, right, and allows for grow. So hopefully,
And so in that vein, there's a discussion of lockups that are showing up in different cities. I think there's a Life Cycle warehouse in Atlanta. There's, Marian can probably tell me a few. There's companies like EcoSet and Recycled Set here in Los Angeles. And what are the benefits of these, and how can we suggest in different cities? Like, wouldn't it be great that every city we did a job in, we could, if they don't have a lockup, we could educate them on how to create one, or to franchise it, or maybe there's some communication there.
Yeah, we certainly, lots of us have been having this discussion, for the last 7 months, quite regularly, in fact. And again, the bump usually is the real estate cost, especially somewhere in Toronto. It's very expensive. Going back to this Digital Canaries, it's in Hamilton. It's less expensive, but it's one of the models that we've been looking at, and I know solmaz, you and I have been kind of promoting the hell out of it because it just really seems like there's a lot of potential there. And then in Toronto, there has been in the past other shops where you could rent scenery from, rent flats, rent risers, all that kind of thing. So, again, because of the real estate, a lot of those people don't exist anymore. But just as a sort of a sideways consideration is Toronto Disposal, Joe, which you've worked with a lot. They basically rent big waste bins, to go to the dump. But they also started harvesting materials on their own initiative, saying, "Hey, look, these are really good bits of wood. These are really good bricks. These are good pipes." And set decorators, and they separate them, and set decorators come and rent them from Toronto Disposal. So even though that wasn't Toronto Disposal's original business plan, this is kind of an offshoot, because they on their own thought stuff should not be going to the dump. And as it turns out, they can rent it. So there's just various initiatives like that would be nice to somehow help support and consolidate in some way. And personally, I definitely believe that some kind of depot or place where you can get assets like this would be highly beneficial. Again, just finding the place to do it, and the company that's willing to embrace that, or whether there's government support in Canada anyway to try to get something like this launched.
Or
I think it's definitely
film commission or anything like that. Yeah.
It's definitely, I think it would be a fantastic thing. So.
And I mean, and just saying, as we're communicating in our circularity world, you're going to go out to the lumber company on the weekend because you need something for your house. It's a really great time to talk to them about circularity. And especially, I think everybody wants a piece of the film industry pie. And if you were to offer them some way to be involved in the film industry that makes sense to them, then talking to them, asking them, will you reclaim your material? Will you take your carpet back? Will you, hi sign shop, I use you all the time. Can you take your Centro back when I'm done? It doesn't biodegrade. Would you mind reclaiming it? You know, just, I think, and a lot of people are into gradual acceptance with this kind of stuff. It's going to take a while. We have to chip away at it. We have to keep talking to them. We have to keep asking them, would you mind? At first they're going to go, what, are you crazy? Are you out of your mind? And then I think, you know, eventually they'll start coming around, the more of us that ask for it to be that way.
Yeah, like Joe's situation with Think Lightweight. I mean, I think, Karen, you're the one that initially gave us the link to that back when we were an early Green Spark Roundtable, but it's in Tillsonburg, Ontario. So again, sorry to be Toronto-centric about this, but there's a big industry in Toronto. So it's like Tillsonburg, it's only like an hour and a half from Toronto. So I got in touch with the guy that, I got in touch with them, and lots of conversations, found out about their products. I connected them to Joe, and now Joe and them are developing a whole modular system because the guy's really keen, right, Joe,
Yes.
on getting into supporting the film industry. Not because he sees it as this kind of like big, like ka-ching moment for him, but he's always very innovative, and on top of making the modular systems, some of their products are like 98% sustainable already, just intact. And I'm actually using them in Winnipeg, where I am right now, because even though shipping isn't great, ironically, there's nothing like that in Winnipeg. So I'm actually shipping Think Lightweight's materials out to Winnipeg for some ceiling pieces, but each panel is 98% recyclable material already. So anyway, Joe, you could talk more to what you're developing with Ian.
Well, it's just he comes from a world that's used to more event, like conventions and stuff like that. So I gave him a tour of our set. We talked through a lot of what and the set I'm working on right now is perfect for a variety of different surfaces, different heights, and so it was good, really good. We had a long walk through, and he thinks he's going to come up with something. So it'll be good. It'll be very good. And Karen, you're right. There's companies like where we get our styrofoam from, and where we get it CNC'd. He now takes back all the offcuts and recycles, and that was a huge thing, because it was always bothered me when you're doing all the styrofoam and it gets cut. So more and more, a lot of our suppliers, when we ask them, are leaning on them, they're thinking that way. So that's another way to move things forward.
Fantastic. I'm happy to hear that. We get so much pushback in the beginning, but the more people that come to the table with that attitude, the more likely they are to turn it around. So that's really good news.
Now, I've heard that Roscoe, I may have just heard this, but Roscoe has developed something to make their trans lights out of that is a more biodegradable or more sustainable product. Again, this is just hearsay. I just remember someone mentioning it, and I have not sought it out any further, but like that's a big company, so that's fantastic that these big plastic drops are going to be made out of something that's more sustainable.
Let's talk about what barriers we see either inside or outside of our industry that may affect our department from fully implementing a circular approach. I mean, obviously the idea of the circular approach is that it's the life cycle that never ends. We plan for the end of a material, we reuse it, we recycle it, the 9 R's. Somebody mentioned that earlier today. I have to look all the 9 up, but it's the recycle, reuse, repurpose, recapture kind of idea. If one thing doesn't work, you try another thing. But anybody want to think about innovations that we could use to upgrade the approach to circular?
I don't know if it's an innovation, but one of the biggest things I think is education in general. It's knowing about it. Part of it is, for example, knowing where to get things to reuse, knowing how to things that can be reused, and knowing and sort of being interested in what happens to things afterwards. Like, for example, in the shows that I worked on, it was a larger show, and at the very end, we were finishing, we got an opportunity to go and, like everyone, every set designer on every level to go and had a walk their construction coordinator to review the sets and talk about them. And we all think all of our construction management that this would be something amazingly useful to do right at the beginning. And this goes to scheduling things, right? Because there isn't always time, but if you think about it ahead of time, plan for it, then everyone from the newest trainee to the most experienced sort of set designer and art director, it gives a very practical and sort of real-time connection, right? To have someone like Joe walk you through and just run you through very basic things of doing things the right way that they can be used, just even understanding how exactly to some of the best practices that would work for those sets, for example. The other thing, we kind of understanding how to do things or connecting afterwards. For example, we were talking about it yesterday. So, how do we pass along these sets, right? For example, how can we ensure that it finds it right? Right now, it's kind of a little bit ad hoc. People are starting to recognize you as someone who does that, but there's so many productions that don't have that or don't have the. What are the best way to connect, right? I know yesterday, so about what are the ways that you do that right now, and what would some of the things that you do to make the system better to share these sets and kind of strengthen their life essentially.
Exactly. So, kind of in a summary, art department personnel must responsibly come to the table with resources and solutions prior to the start of a show. Build and share green resource lists, reimagine how we are wrongly using materials, and stay on top of new material possibilities. Remember, circularity requires a lot of communication and collaboration. So I think we're at 55 minutes, Zina.
Really already. I just want to throw in here, again, there's so much information out there. And I know, Zina, you're probably sharing it in the chat room there. But because just today, the Directors Guild of Canada has launched their DGC Green thing. And it's, I think the link is in the chat. And it's great because it goes through every department. It's just been launched today. And it goes through every department, whether it's assistant director, art department, production manager, production coordinator, and with top tips, sort of here's how you can start doing it now. So again, there's a big picture and hopefully we'll get to that. But I think in the short term, it's we have to try to normalize these things. So all these things we've talked about today help get us a little closer to that. And these top tips that we've offered are echo what other websites and organizations have done. But anyways, it's new today, so have a look. And it gives you just top tips of how you can just start doing things now, whether it's designing modularly, there's a green suppliers list, develop a green suppliers list in your community. There's various things on the list, so have a look.
Yeah, I recommend it. It's very, very informative. So I thought maybe we could all contribute to as we wind down to some actionable ideas. I've kind of got a list going, but why don't we start with Joe and get some input from you on, as we start to close our panel, what you think some good actionable ideas that people can take away with them from this panel.
Well, I think the most important thing is to stop looking at material as just a one-off. That's the biggest thing. Just automatically start thinking, how can I reuse this? Because that might mean instead of gluing it down, you use a mesh, like with floor tiles. It might mean, maybe, like I say, maybe not using glue. It may be using less plaster to feather it out. I think that's a key thing. If you could just what's helping us is now materials have gone down a little bit, but they were sky high. Their materials got just crazy there for a while. They've come down a little bit, but they're still very expensive. So we've got that on our side, that to help cut costs as well, is to just start reusing. I think that's a very first sort of positive start.
Right, and in that vein, we found some possibilities for replacement of Luan, which is something I know Zena has been working on for a long time, and I have been working on for a long time. We probably all have. There's a company called Ply Veneer that we're working on. They are seemingly not in grand distribution yet, but we're talking their supplies. It's plyveneer.com. And they have several things that could, in fact, be used instead of Luan. It's lighter weight. It's still like a plywood veneer kind of interior, and it doesn't really bend. Or, sometimes in these replacements, coordinators will tell me that it's not going to work for them because it's too bendy, or it doesn't paint well, or whatever they're used to, with Luan. So these sustainably and locally forested materials, is great to throw it on our resource list. We talked about Madziak and modular design. Anyone can jump in here anytime. These are just some things that I
think just echoing the things we've been talking about, like, repurposing, not just recycling, but like, when I say recycling, I don't mean dump it in the bin and hope it goes to a recycling depot somewhere. I mean, recycling it, giving it another life as something else. To me, that's what recycling means in terms of the circularity and in terms of what our work is. So I think, we to reiterate what we've been talking about: modularity, materials, sustainable, conscientious choice of materials that aren't one of, as Joe said.
I think kind of the other idea is to always encourage your crews to, on their downtime, on their 54-hour weekends, to look around and see what's out there that they may have not have they may have missed. Because I do this about every 5 years, where I do a deep dive into what's out there. It's like, you get so used to using the same materials all over the place, so you don't even go and look anymore, because it just seems.
And I think we're on the cusp of a lot of things shifting, in terms of, like, both the manufacturers are shifting, and also us as consumers, so to speak, of these materials, re-looking at what and how we want to use them. I think there's a big shift happening, and in Canada, at least, I think it will be forced. I think there will be either tax credits or penalties or something like that. Late again, I mean, it isn't. It's sort of in the crosshairs, fuzzily in the foreground, but I think it will be, whether it's awards or rewards given for being more sustainable and circular, or whether it's penalties for not being. I think there will be guidelines that will help make the shift more clear.
Right.
In the same line, actually, it's very much connected to the same things, but seeking out these companies that are trying to do alternative things, not only materials that we can use to make our sets, but also these rental companies. They're there. They're for sure there. They're a little bit under the radar, but spreading the word essentially about them and trusting them to help you with that, and kind of like be willing to go that route instead of like creating everything fresh. I think that's very useful, because it will help their business model grow and be viable with, like, doing, practicing set design and helpful.
Yeah, I think share, talk. I mean, that's what'll help, get this more in our, normalize it. That's what'll help normalize it.
So I guess, Zena, time to wrap it up.
It's time to wrap it up. Yes. Thank you all so much. Marian, solmaz, Joe, Karen. I mean, your insights from your perspective is just, it's so valuable to hear what you're doing and how you're thinking about it. And, this peer-to-peer communication. Please keep telling your stories. Please keep sharing your resources that you're coming up with. It's super important. And so I just want to thank you for joining in and sharing a bit about your work. and what you're thinking about. And I want to just tell everyone, please, go to our event feed. We've got poll questions in there. Please search for them. All of this material will be available for you, all the resources that we shared. So thank you again, and we'll see you all in the next section coming up very soon.
Okay, thanks, Marian. Thanks, Zina.
Thank you.
Guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.